So you want to buy an Airbnb, but you have no idea where to start or even how much money you need to save. Luckily, you've come to the right place. Hi there, my name is Katharine Quinn. I am a theater creative, entrepreneur, and coach. I talk about Broadway lifestyle and financial freedom, and this video falls into the last category, financial freedom. Also lifestyle to an extent, but we'll get there. I bought a property in upstate New York, 2 hours north of the city in 2021. Prior to actually purchasing the property, I looked literally all over the country for where I wanted this property to be. Because I live in Manhattan and this was my first go at Airbnb, I know people can manage properties from different states. The first one, I was like, I want this baby to be close to home. If something goes awry, if I don't have people up in the area who can help out in a pinch, I could conceivably drive up to Hunter and take care of it. Here's a quick rundown of my property. I was searching for the perfect spot for my vacation rental. I had a very lean budget, which meant I was likely going to end up with a property that wasn't quite turnkey, that I was gonna need to put a lot of sweat equity in myself. That means I'm repainting the walls, I am installing hardware, I am assembling furniture. Don't get me wrong, I ended up hiring several contractors to accomplish a number of things at the house, but I also built a fire pit and landscaped. So many things I had never ever done ever before. The initial places that I was interested in were Orlando, which was outside of my easy driving distance, obviously from New York City. I'm a bit of a Disney adult, please don't judge me too harshly. Actually, it's okay, I judge myself a little bit. And the Hudson Valley. Kingston, New York is one of my favorite places in the whole wide world. I'm like almost hesitant to talk about it on here. Secret's definitely out in the Northeast. I just don't want more people going there, but it really is very swoony and great. Anyway, by the time I had any money whatsoever to actually purchase a house, I was priced out completely from Kingston. And I had been looking at property in the area for 4 years. During that time and during the pandemic, as we all know, housing prices, especially in like just outside of a city areas, freaking skyrocketed. And that was true of Kingston. So I truly couldn't afford a spot there anymore. Ultimately, all things for a reason, I ended up sort of on a whim looking at 3 properties up in the Catskills, so further north than Hudson Valley. We'll do a little map so that you can see like New York City, Hudson Valley, the Catskills. And I visited a town called Tannersville, New York. Tannersville is super charming. It's sort of like a one-street little downtown, super cute antique shops, very like Schitt's Creek, Rose Apothecary vibes.
Oh my God, ew, David.
Some amazing restaurants. And the nature is stunning because it's literally on a ski mountain. Just beyond Tannersville is Hunter Mountain. And just this way, I'm really good at geography. This way from Hunter is Wyndham. At any rate, I saw 3 homes in the area, fell absolutely head over heels in love with the area. I thought it was so beautiful, so charming, and the prices hadn't escalated to the same extent that they had in Hudson Valley, a little further south. The first home we saw was ultimately the home I ended up purchasing. It was just a 2-bed, 1-bath, tiny little house that wasn't really like particularly a cabin, not particularly a cottage, maybe more of a cottage, just like a little house on 2 acres of land, like in the woods, babbling brook behind, looking out onto Hunter Mountain. Like you can literally see skiers coming down the mountain. And I was just like, this has much potential and gives me really special feelings. It was the kind of place where I was like, oh my God, I could see myself hosting Thanksgiving for like my family here. One of the things about short-term rentals is you might not want to rent it out forever. In an ideal scenario, you're buying a property that will both have cash flow in the short term, meaning renters are covering your mortgage and then some, and also your property is appreciating and paying for itself. With Quinn Hollow, the house I ended up purchasing, I felt really confident that it would do both of those things, and so far, it has. I absolutely love being an Airbnb host, and also it's a beautiful place to go visit. So this brings me to point number 1. Where do you want your Airbnb or VRBO or vacation rental property to be? Part A of step 1, where do you want to go? You're going to be spending a lot of time at the very least setting up this property. And your property is going to do better if it's a place that you actually believe in. What's an area you love? Literally on a sheet of paper, make a list and leave yourself open to new possibilities. I'm a big fan of the Bigger Pockets forums online. Bigger Pockets can get a little bit bro-y for my liking. However, it's a fabulous resource and forum where you can literally search any town, village, city, and chances are there is an entire board dedicated to people who are asking questions that you likely have about the area. Part B of step 1, finding your location, is what are the rules and regulations in your area? Short-term rental regulations vary widely depending on what city, town, type of community, type of property, type of apartment, Manhattan, how much of your property you're renting. The rules are different everywhere, and this can feel really intimidating. Airbnb actually has a helpful page on their site where it will like directly link you to what the rules and regulations are of a lot of the major markets, but for smaller markets, it's a little bit tricky. For me, I am in a village. I went to the board meeting minutes of the village. This is an ongoing conversation with every single town, so chances are it's at least been discussed. For my town, it had been, and I was just reading through the language about short-term rentals. At the time that I purchased, there were basically no regulations. It was kind of the Wild West. However, it had been brought up in board meetings, town hall meetings, and the general weather report was, where I have purchased is a tourist town. It is a tourist destination. It's on a ski mountain. And Airbnbs, VRBOs, vacation rentals are only going to assist in the economy of that area. I understand this is a complicated issue. I understand this is a double-edged sword. We're gonna talk about that a little bit in a minute, but that was the general feeling about short-term rentals in the area. So I felt positive that it would be well received. So you've thought about where you wanna be, you've looked at your rules and regulations, now go pay a visit. Walk around, go to the downtown, look on Airbnb and see what your competition would be. Look on VRBO, see what your competition would be. Also, anything you can do to get a vibe of how the town feels about short-term rentals is invaluable. You do not want to be the rental that everyone in town hates. For me, I prioritized furnishing my home with luxury furnishings, having a bit more of a high-end price tag, and a lower capacity, intentionally lower than it could actually hold. And then I installed fences all along the perimeter so that not only my guests would feel privacy, but also my neighbors. They're human beings who are like living in the area. And I am thankfully on a big piece of land, so like I'm not very close to them, but I don't want to disrupt their lives. Does that make sense? It's kind and human. Step 1, part D, do your due diligence. Now, all of this is technically due diligence, but particularly look at comps in your area. What rates are other comparable properties to like what you think your property will ultimately end up being? What are they charging nightly? Is there seasonality? Is there a high season and a low season? So for instance, I'm in a ski town, so high season for me is like November to April. It's a little sleepier the other half of the year. These are good things to know so that you're just like prepared for the vast fluctuation. Then you're taking a look at like typical occupancy rates. So let's say it rents out all weekends, but it never rents out during the week. But you can like ask a premium for those weekend nights. Will that offset your mortgage, your expenses, and ideally a little extra? Honestly, you're doing okay if you're just covering your costs. If the property is paying for itself, it's a win. It is an ever-growing asset that's also appreciating. So like, if you can get a little extra cheddar additional, so many unexpected little things are gonna come up that are so expensive, so that's a good idea to have a little extra cushion and padding anyway. Then on top of that, obviously you want it to be like a thriving business. There are other YouTubers on here who I absolutely adore in this space, namely Rob Built. I think his content is fantastic. I watched it for hours prior to purchasing a home, after purchasing a home. He was really the primary one that I followed, but there's a lot of really good resources out there. It is common knowledge among short-term vacation rental owners that you essentially need like a portfolio in order for those properties to really make you any money, because most of the time the returns aren't so significant that you could like quit your day job or even have like a really, really hardy part-time job with just one rental property. So it's also like, what are your goals? I'm gonna say this is like a big umbrella thought that you need to have. Is this a property you want to have for the rest of your life? Is this a property you only want for the next 10 years? Less than 10 years, you shouldn't be buying it. That's like my own personal feeling. Unless you're like in the flipping game, that's not my journey. We're not talking about that here. Is this strictly for rental income? Are you mostly interested in current cash flow as opposed to how much it's going to appreciate? Or are you also playing the appreciation game? You're like, oh yeah, this area, it's gonna be good stuff. The due diligence continues. The next step is go to AirDNA. AirDNA is not foolproof, and it is not always accurate. I once looked up what it said about Quinn Hollow and it was like bogus numbers. However, it is very useful for giving you an idea of occupancy rate, seasonality, how much people are charging, and other comps in the area. The way AirDNA works is you subscribe to the area that you're interested in, so I'm like never not hoping for an additional property. It's TBD about where that wants to be. So as I'm looking at multiple markets, I subscribe to multiple markets and I'm tracking them and seeing how they're faring. Then you start looking at properties. Is this even an area that you could conceivably afford? We're in step 2, financials. A general rule of thumb is the lowest percentage you can put down is 10%. So using Quinn Hollow as an example, I think I purchased Quinn Hollow for like $310, $315. Very affordable, particularly by New York standards. I put 10% down because I didn't have the down payment for a 20%. As I've discussed in other videos, namely my how to purchase an apartment in New York City video, timeline-wise, I purchased my apartment in New York in 2020. I closed January of 2020, and then in July of 2021, I closed on Quinn Hollow. That one has a lot more detailed information about the breakdown of all of the expenses of purchasing a home, but broad strokes. I've got the $31K that I can put into the house, but you also have closing costs. Just to be safe, I usually am like 5%, even though that's usually more than you need. Then you need to see if there are any renovations that you need to do. For me, I added a bathroom, a skylight, repainted the entire interior, added a wall, changed the structure, put in new appliances, changed all of the lighting fixtures, put in a ton of new furniture, built a fire pit, built a new entryway, which includes not just stairs, but like a gable over the porch, built a wraparound deck and porch, installed 2 fences. So like this added up. And if you are not buying turnkey, I promise you, everything that everyone says is true. You are not an exception to the rule. You will spend more than you plan to. It is just the way it goes. The way it worked with me and my contractors was indeed, it was ultimately twice as expensive as initially quoted. I could make an entire video on how to select your contractors, because to be totally honest, I went through hell with several of mine. Well, 1 or 2 of mine. Literal trauma. The contractor jobs took twice as long and cost twice as much as quoted. But overall, all of the things I just mentioned, I did in a 3-month span, which in real time felt very slow because I was like, I am negative dollars, like lots of negative dollars into this project now. I need to get on Airbnb ASAP. Every month that you're renovating, you have to calculate those monthly expenses as well. So like, you're paying for all the utilities. You also have your monthly payment. If you're paying 10%, you're also gonna do your mortgage insurance. So it was an expensive endeavor in multiple ways to renovate and not purchase something that was turnkey that I could just buy or thrift a bunch of great furniture and throw in and be like, I did it. I put in enormous windows into one of the walls. I have like a cathedral ceiling. It's like A-frame-ish, and I put in 2 massive triangular windows, which totally changed the place. I don't regret a single renovation. I added a like grill area, like pergola, put in a hot tub. Like again, no regrets, can't forget what I did for love, but it was a lot of work and a lot of money that I'm working on paying down with my business. That is like broad strokes, initial steps. Pinpoint some areas of interest. Look at their rules and regulations. Do your due diligence. Visit the area, get a vibe for how people feel about short-term rentals. What's your competition? Is the market oversaturated? Is there seasonality? What kind of rates can you charge? Then, can you afford it? And what kind of deal do you want? Do you want 10% down, 20% down? What's the vibe? Crunch those numbers, look at comps in the area. Be incredibly clear about what you want to do with this property. We just talked about that. Now, my friend, it's time to find your home. Some realtors that I have worked with are not as well versed specifically in short-term rentals, and so they can't speak to like, oh, there's regulations here or whatever. That's also just like not ultimately their job. But there are realtors who often are investors themselves and have a particular interest in that facet of real estate. And it's really, really useful to partner with someone like that who's really keeping an eye on particular kinds of deals, or is really, really, really on top of the area and knows about the trends and is interested in the overall growth of the area. I mean, all realtors ultimately should, and probably are, be. Again, I just think this is a useful thing. You put in your offer, then you gotta build your Airbnb. We can totally talk about it, but it would have to be another video because I've already been talking for too long. Do you want to be an Airbnb host or have your own short-term rental? If so, I wanna know where you want your short-term rental. Also, any guesses as to where I'm headed next? You know what to do, leave a comment below. As always, if you enjoyed this video, a thumbs up and a subscribe are super helpful to me as a new creator. Please follow me on Instagram and TikTok at It's Katharine Quinn, and I post new videos here every single Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So I'll see you next time. Bye guys.